Good morning from South Africa and afternoon in Singapore. Welcome, His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Mr. Mokitlane, South African High Commissioner in Singapore, Honorable Mrs. Ling, Minister of State and for Trade and Industry and Culture, Community and Youth in Singapore. Foreign dignitaries, event sponsors, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol is observed. Today, the 27th of April is our Freedom Day. It's also 27 years since South Africa's first non-racial election in 1994. Today, we celebrate and pay homage to our country's liberation. The theme of South Africa's Freedom Day this month and today is dedicated to Charlotte Mokitlane, the mother of Black freedom in South Africa. Today, we celebrate slightly differently to the norm. With the event of COVID-19, this has forced us to reinvent how we celebrate. Although different, this has not come without its benefits, I feel. Today, I address you from home soil in South Africa, and I address 150 people in 4 continents, and together we celebrate with small live events in Singapore and South Africa, respectively. It is still true that through COVID-19, we are united in our celebration as a people. My name is Nigel Ritzen. I'm the sitting president of the South African Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, a fairly new chamber dedicated to promoting business synergies and opportunities between these two great countries. This event is dedicated to showcasing South Africa, its people, trade and industry, and its tourism opportunities. We have a special showcase at the end of today's session, which in true South African spirit will unite our feelings of solidarity and union. And over to the first speaker today, introducing our first speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Modise Mokitlane.
My name is Modise Mokitlane. I'm the High Commissioner for South Africa in Singapore, Program Director, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the President and members of the South African Chamber, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the 27th April 2021, marks the 27th anniversary of the attainment of a democratic dispensation in my country, South Africa. It marks a moment in the year 1994 when the people of South Africa declared their commitment to evolve a country and a nation that is at peace with itself and at peace with the world. A country with a democracy underpinned by a constitutional pact regarded in the world as one of the best. A constitutional pact that elevates the rule of law, democratic endeavor, equality and human rights to hitherto unprecedented heights. It is a time which consistently demands on the government and people of my country to refocus and appreciate the journey they have traversed to arrive at the current beachhead. It is also a time for my country to pay homage to the efforts of the countries of the world for their unrelenting support in nudging the people of my country to arrive at a social pact. Singapore is amongst those foremost countries whose commitment to the evolution of a just society in South Africa will remain indelible in the annals of history. Our commitment to ensuring both quantitative and qualitative relations with the government and people of Singapore remains steadfast. Based on their own state of becoming, they understood that beyond the 1994 Pact, there will be a need to robust economic activity in my country to uplift it. It is upon these considerations that the two countries embarked on a process of knitting a closer tie. We value the significant development between the two countries on trade, investment, and tourism. My country also has a number of bilateral cooperation agreements reflected in the MOUs signed by the two countries. But more importantly, too, is the continuous and consistent support of each other's posits in multilateral institutions, such as the United Nations Security Councils and world platforms, where we can support each other's candidature. Our two countries have a structural bilateral mechanism, the Foreign Office consultations, where we engage on strategic matters aimed at strengthening the shared relations. I have no doubt that South Africa presents one of the most important propositions for bilateral trade, foreign direct investment, joint ventures, and tourism to the government and people of Singapore. This is further accentuated by the conclusion of the African Continental Free Trade Area, encompassing 54 countries with a combined population of approximately 1.3 billion and a GDP of United States $2.3 trillion. The ACFTA mitigates the cost of doing business in Africa and regularizes more import-export tariffs across Africa. South Africa has the necessary roads, aviation, rail, and ports infrastructure to enable ease of access to some of the most lucrative investment markets in Africa. The sophisticated banking and financial services which South Africa is capable of, which has footprints in many African countries, provides an infrastructure for trade and investment with the rest of Africa. There can be no doubt that over the years, there has been consistent growth of South Africa's relations with Singapore. The steady growth of trade, investment, and tourism over the years has unfortunately been significantly interrupted by COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these debilitating conditions brought about by the intervention of the pandemic, trade and investment between these two countries remains significant, with total export of South Africa to Singapore valued at 7.9 billion South African rands in 2019, and imports from Singapore to South Africa valued at 7.5 billion South African rands. This May, South Africa recorded a surplus of 400 million rands. In 2020, whilst there was a decline in the trade figures from 15.4 billion South African rands in 2019 to 14.2 billion in 2020, South Africa was able to record a surplus of 2.2 billion South African rands. With the decision of Singapore government to ensure diversity in supply chains on agricultural fresh produce and products of South Africa, as we have seen a rise in the export of fresh produce from 500 million in 2019 to currently 656 million South African rands in 2020. Singapore continues to show confidence in my country with investment in key sectors of our economy. Amongst the most significant investment is that of a partnership between Petradec Singapore and Bidvest Tank Terminals, South Africa to build a 22,500 ton storage facility in Richards Bay, South Africa. This investment of 1 billion South African rands will escalate into an investment to the tune of 2 billion over the years. Lastly, South Africa will continue to nurture our relationship with Singapore through cooperation in areas such as skills transfer, technology, digital economy, and communication. South Africa is aware of the role of Singapore as a member of ASEAN and how our continued cordial relations can leverage our access to broader markets of ASEAN. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your words on this very special day. Our next speaker, introducing Ms. Lo Yeng Ling, Minister of State and Trade and Industry and Culture, Community and Youth in the Republic of Singapore. She has some words for the South Africans living abroad and locally in South Africa.
Your Excellency, Modise Mokitlane, High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm very honored to be part of this virtual celebration of the 27th year of South Africa's Freedom Day. South Africa's achievement since its watershed elections in 1994 have been nothing short of remarkable. Its economic progress and journey in inclusivity and diversity is testament to the tenacity and resilience of its people. As a member of the G20 and BRICS, with an active role in the African Union, South Africa has also established itself as an important player in global affairs. In the past 1 year, countries all around the world went through several challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the virus continues to affect many lives and livelihoods. Like many countries, Singapore and South Africa are in the process of vaccinating the population and focusing on reviving the economy. I'm very glad to hear that South Africa's vaccine rollout is well underway. Significantly, South Africa is one of the few countries with the capacity to produce COVID-19 vaccines domestically. The Expanse plant in Eastern Cape, which will produce these vaccines, is a world-class facility. I'm confident that South Africa will emerge stronger from this pandemic. Singapore and South Africa have been long-standing partners and friends since the establishment of our diplomatic ties in 1993. Our relationship spans from areas such as trade and development to defense and aviation. Amid the present economic uncertainty, it is imperative that we strengthen the economic links between our two countries and regions. South Africa is consistently among Singapore's largest trading partners in sub-Saharan Africa. As a regional powerhouse supported by well-developed infrastructure, South Africa is an excellent launchpad for Singapore companies looking to expand in Southern Africa. There is increasing interest from companies in both Singapore and South Africa to explore opportunities in sectors such as digital, logistics, urban solutions, and energy. For instance, Vida Technologies, a Singapore ICT solutions company, has expanded into South Africa through a partnership with telecommunications operator MTN. Vida Technologies complements MTN's service offerings with their supply of related hardware devices such as feature phones and smartphones. As we continue to to strengthen our country's economic ties, we also want to seize the opportunities arising from COVID-19. All over the world, the pandemic has accelerated technology adoption, and many countries are making concerted efforts to launch digital initiatives to empower their people and businesses. For instance, in its push towards digitalization, the South African government has rolled out cashless facilities and piloted online self-services for the disbursement of social grants. In Singapore, we too have ramped up our digitalization drive with initiatives such as the SMEs Go Digital program. We want to ensure that businesses can continue to operate effectively in the new COVID-19 normal. There are lots of opportunities for Singapore and South Africa to share experiences in digitalization and work on possible joint initiatives. Even before year 2020, South Africa has already been making efforts to build up its digital economy to further promote trade and business. The World Economic Forum's Africa Growth Platform was launched in Cape Town in year 2019, recognizing the city's status as a tech hub. The South African government also recently launched a new Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution to work on challenges and opportunities presented by new technologies. Globally, the digital economy will underpin our post-pandemic economic recovery and serve as a key engine for growth. In this regard, we hope to partner South Africa in building digital bridges that enable trusted data flows and facilitate seamless end-to-end trade. Our two countries have benefited from our long-standing people-to-people exchanges, including the sharing of knowledge and experiences. More than 800 South African officials have participated in efforts under the Singapore Cooperation Programme, where we exchange best practices in areas like urban solutions and trade. Just last week, South Africa's National School of Government and our Civil Service College signed an MOU to collaborate on governance and public administration training. Such exchanges deepen the various levels of cooperation between our two countries and strengthen our bilateral ties. We hope our friendship and collaboration will have many opportunities to grow in the future. On that note, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, let me extend my most sincere congratulations to South Africa and its people on the occasion of South Africa's 2021 Freedom Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Lo Ying Ling, for your kind words for our Freedom Day today. All right, everybody, we are going to introduce our next speaker, Walter de Oude, a successful South African entrepreneur in Singapore who founded Singlife. We interviewed Walter as part of actually a webinar series we have ongoing as we interview professional South Africans who are based in Singapore. We invited Walter to be part of the Freedom Day event, as his story is certainly one to be proud of and to celebrate. He shares how he founded Singlife in Singapore, one of the largest life insurance companies in Singapore. There's a lot more to this interview, so just watch out for our links that we will post on our website after the event. Introducing Walter and interviewed by Jason, one of our fellow board members at the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much for joining us. And maybe for those of you that don't know Walter, and particularly maybe those out of South Africa that will be listening, you know, Walter started Singlife in 2014, and Singlife is last year completed a 2.3 billion merger with UK insurer Aviva, and it's one of the largest life insurance companies now in Singapore. Walter was also added by Business Insider to its list of one of the 10 leaders transforming finance in Asia. The focus of Singlife, I mean, Walter, you can elaborate more, is to create a seamless and interconnected digital finance journey for its customers. So super proud to have you on board and part of the celebration and part of this webinar series. So I'll kick off with a intro question and maybe just to go back to your roots. And I mean, you are South African, you're partly South African. We've had a few chats over the past few months, and maybe you just elaborate where you're from in South Africa and a little bit about your backstory before getting into why and how you got to Singapore.
Sure, Jay. It's great. Thanks for the invite, firstly, and it's always nice to be a part of the South African community and to contribute to the greater good of what it is that we can do. So my background is I'm a Joburg boy. I went to school at Risveld High School in Risveld Park in Johannesburg. I went to Wits University. I'm a middle child of three, and coming out of South Africa, you do all the things that South Africans do growing up, which is ride bicycles, play rugby, play cricket, do all the fun things that you got to do and grow up like we all have very, very fond memories of. So, very, very fortunate to have come up through, decent schools and decent university. I was lucky to have a bursary to study actuarial science at Wits, and that bursary came from a company called Swiss Re. Swiss Re is a big reinsurance company globally, and I was working for them in South Africa starting in about 1995. And then, my background, as I said, I'm an actuary by profession, and I studied remotely as an actuary and to qualify in 2000. I got married in 2000, and then in middle of 2000, we decided as a family to try and explore what life is like outside of South Africa. And Swiss Re gave me an opportunity on a secondment basis to come to Singapore and work on one of their business lines that they had here, which was on health insurance. And so that was where the journey started for me to come out of South Africa. So I came to Singapore first time in 2000, working at Swiss Re, and then progressed from there.
Yeah, an amazing story, and I think 17 years. Then is that it? How many years in Singapore?
Yeah, it will be about 21 years since we got here the first time. So I worked for Swiss Re in 2000. Then I had to come back to South Africa to continue my role there. But my boss in Singapore at the time said, "Look, we actually need you to help us in Japan as well, if you could." Okay. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I then went to Japan from 2001, 2002 to do work there. And then that went really well. And so they asked if I could do something similar in India for a couple of years. So then I went off to India for 2003, 2004, also with Swiss Re, doing actuarial product development and that kind of thing. And then 2005 decided actually we loved Singapore so much as a place to live. We didn't have kids at the time, and got an offer from a consulting firm, Watson Wyatt it was called at the time. Now it's called Willis Towers Watson, to go and do actuarial consulting work from Singapore for the Southeast Asia region. Did that for a couple of years from 2005. Then after a few years of doing that, you realize that actually, well, I realized that what I really like to do is build things as opposed to tell other people how to build things. So I left consulting and joined HSBC. Their insurance businesses here in Singapore in 2007 as the actuary and product guy for them, and then grew through the HSBC world to the point where by 2010, I was running all of the insurance businesses for HSBC here in Singapore as the CEO, and I did that from 2010 until about 2014.
And that's when Singlife started. Is that when?
And that's where it started. Yeah.
Entrepreneurial itch, and you got going, and you wanted to create something on your own.
That's right. So at HSBC, I'd had an opportunity to move on to the next thing within the group, which would have been to go and run one of their businesses in Europe. And Cindy and I at the time had a good chat and said, well, we have this opportunity to also think about, should we try and start a new life insurance company from scratch? And at that time, the choice is either do I want to go and drive somebody else's big bus, or do I want to try and create my own? And sometimes they say the things you regret more the things in life, the things that you don't do, than the things that you do. So I thought, well, I can always get another job if the startup world doesn't pan out. So let's just give it a try and see what happens and see if we can pull it off. Which we did. So I got a group of guys together from that I'd worked with around. We had very strong relationships with the regulator here already, given the regulatory type of responsibilities that we had before. I went to the regulators and said, this is something we believe we can create better value for customers through a certain technological design around how we deliver insurance to people, basically disintermediating or making it digitally capable. And went to the regulator and said, this is what we want to do. And the regulator said, yeah, let's support us in doing that. So, starting a life insurance company from scratch was quite tough, because you have this, in all startups, normally to raise money, you have to have revenue. And we had this difficult position where we couldn't get any revenue because we didn't have a license to run the business. And we didn't have a license to run the business because we didn't have the capital to support the business. And we didn't have the capital because we didn't have any revenue. Didn't have revenue because we didn't have a license. Didn't have a license because no capital. So it was this, very difficult starting point.
Chicken and egg situation.
Chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
That's right. So it took us about 3 years to raise the capital that we needed. We needed to raise 50 million at the start, which we did. But it took quite a long time, and mainly because the people that provided us with capital had to have faith in our ability to execute based on what we were dreaming of, rather than what we were actually putting in place at the time. And so we're very lucky with our early investors. We were fortunate enough to have the family office of Michael Spencer, the founder of ICAP from London. So he put in, took about 30% of the business at that time. And we had a Chinese investor from Credit China, fintech, which then also put in about a third of the capital that we needed. And that got us going, and that was the ticket to the races, and we've just been building the business ever since.
So that would be one of the challenges I was going to ask you. What are some of the challenges that you would have experienced in that startup phase? And it's getting the trust and the buy-in from a select group of investors. So then how did you keep them on board? How did you keep them motivated and interested to staying on board? Because I suppose that's one of the biggest risks as a startup, is that you potentially can lose those investors and they don't put more capital in. So I suppose maybe a couple of tips there. And what do you do to keep guys interested?
Keeping guys interested is relatively easy as long as you deliver on the promises that you made to them in the first place, right? So the trick there is don't be overly optimistic, because if you promise the world and miss it, then it does backfire later on. But the hard part was actually getting the investors on board. We must have gone through hundreds and hundreds of different avenues to raise capital, and to get it to stick was tough. We initially started with big insurance companies. We thought, well, let's go to big insurance companies and then set ourselves up as a digital offering for a large insurance company. Then they can provide us with equity, and we can then fold it back into their business later on. We found that the traditional insurance industry was very, very arrogant, and they couldn't see why they should be investing when they should be able to do it themselves. So that really didn't work. We tried almost everything, and then we went to the big private equity, and in private equity it's quite tough because you get three kinds of buckets of money. You get money that invests in ventures or greenfield. You get money that invests in financial services, and you have big buckets of money, right? And so the intersection of those three is very, very small. So it's very difficult to find someone that does VC and big bucket and financial services all at the same time. So that really, really struggled. So the combination of Michael Spencer with the fintech guys from China, that was exactly what we needed. And then the capital table then grew as the business grew. So Michael put in some more money as we grew. We then had some further changes and brought on some big investors along the way. So Aberdeen Asset Management came in. We had Aflac, which is a very large insurance company out of Japan, US, and then Sumitomo Life came in across the first 2 years of our business as we grew the thing out. And then finally culminating in the transaction that we did now with Aviva, where the consortium led by Singlife, we took in additional capital from a private equity firm TPG, and then combined the businesses now with Aviva, such that Aviva retains 25% of the complete business. But then the existing Singlife shareholders and TPG then control the other 75%. So that was a big transaction in how things go. But we were able to build the Singlife story from the capitalization of it to its delivery of a great consumer product from nothing in 2017, to value the Singlife business at about 500 million when we did the transaction end of last year, which was a fantastic story for Singlife.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm sure you're going to be over the headlines in the newspapers in the next coming years with the success that you've achieved with Singlife. I'm sure what you've done there will translate into new successes. And I just wanted to say thank you for your time today to be a part of. It's great having you a part of the South African community here in Singapore. And as a chamber, we're very proud of what you've done, and great to have you on board. And also to be a part of the celebration of Freedom Day. And, I think 27th of April is a great day for South Africa. And, thank you for being a part of that.
Thanks, Jason. Great to chat.
Thanks, Walter and Jason. What a story, really showing, been an inspiring story, journey of a startup in Singapore, in true South African spirit, being entrepreneurial and looking for every opportunity. Walter, thanks very much for your time today. Introducing our next speaker, Premeshin Naidoo, who's the Managing Director of Middle East and Asia Corridor in Absa, and also a corporate member within the Chamber of Commerce. Premeshin is going to share with us their plans for the future and their footprint within Singapore and the Southeast Asian market and the synergies between that and South Africa and Africa. Over to you, Prem.
On the 27th of April, 27 years ago, I did not appreciate that I would be a part of history that would redefine the future of South Africa in my small little way. As a student at the time, I worked at a polling station during the first democratic elections in 1994, ushering in people to vote, and subsequently being part of the vote counting process over 2 days. At the time, I did not realize how momentous this day would become. And while South Africa has had its fair share of challenges over the last almost three decades, the opportunities have also been immense to allow people and companies to build their futures and succeed on a global platform. As one of those companies on the global platform, Absa has evolved from a largely South African-focused bank to become one of the largest African banks with international connectivity. Today, I speak to you as the head of Absa's Middle East and Asia business, with the purpose of supporting multinational companies looking to trade or invest in Africa. We currently support well over 100 Southeast Asian-based multinationals who conduct business activities related to Africa. If you're not familiar with Absa, we have in excess of 100 years of experience on the African continent, listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange with a pre-COVID market cap in excess of $10 million. We're also present in 10 markets, as well as 2 rep offices in Nigeria and Namibia. We have local operational execution and in-depth local market knowledge spanning across the regulatory and operating environment. And in addition, we also have offices in New York and London to provide international connectivity. The Absa team seeks to deliver to its clients the comprehensive corporate and investment banking product solutions, from advisory to financing, as well as transactional banking solutions. And our focus clients in Southeast Asia are those who see Africa as strategically important, companies who also have a growth mindset related to the African continent, and who seek to be part of improving the lives of ordinary Africans. A growing number of Southeast Asian companies are venturing into the African market, and Singapore has emerged as one of the largest investors of these Southeast Asian countries into Africa, signifying growing ties between these two regions. South Africa is one of the largest beneficiaries of this investment, hence Absa's very keen interest to continue to develop our business relationships. In particular, Absa remains a leading bank to the mining and agri sectors in Africa, as well as a growing focus on commodity trading, which has a very strong base out of Singapore. Absa's Asia corridor business is therefore focused on deepening relationships with Singaporean entities and other Southeast Asian-based entities doing business in Africa. Additionally, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement gives access to a single market and common trade area, which covers 54 countries, 1.3 billion people, and more than $2 trillion in GDP. This interregional trade catalyst opens opportunities for multinational corporates to invest in African production capacity for African consumption. South Africa's status as one of the largest economies on the continent and probably the most industrialized country with well-developed infrastructure places it at an advantage to leverage the benefits available under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and to take a leading role in terms of attracting FDI from Southeast Asian nations into the continent. This opportunity is significant in its potential to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans and to deliver the economic upliftment that people have dreamed about since the 1994 elections. To spur economic growth, the South African government has gazetted about 50 projects spanning across a number of different sectors. And in each of these sectors, Absa is very well represented and probably one of the leading financiers. We've seen a significant amount of interest from Southeast Asian companies looking to access these products, and Absa can support many of these companies in terms of the requirements related to delivering on these projects. As regards business opportunities between South Africa and Southeast Asia, in November 2020, Minister Naledi Pandor, South Africa's International Relations Minister, signed the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Treaty of Amity and Cooperation Agreement, making South Africa the third African signatory after Morocco and Egypt to enter the ASEAN family. As the world reconfigures its economic and growth strategies to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, we are keen to share our African expertise and capabilities to facilitate the growth of Africa-ASEAN business relationships. In conclusion, Freedom Day in South Africa gives us an opportunity to reflect on the long and difficult road that led to South Africa's democracy. As an organization, it is important for us to therefore endorse and promote unity and the restoration of human dignity by acting as an enabler for economic growth and development by supporting trade and investment between South Africa and Southeast Asia. In the words of Minister Pandor, Nelson Mandela's wish for friendship and cooperation with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations came to fruition when the country signed the Treaty of Amity. This will provide much scope for greater collaboration. And as we move towards a post-COVID world, we look forward to further building our strategic partnerships with the Singapore Chamber and its respective members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prem. Again, we are very proud in supporting Absa's journey in the chamber, and really excited to see what the future lies. Right, the next speaker, I want to introduce Nigel Ward. Same first name as me, so that's good. President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Actually the biggest chamber and oldest chamber on the African continent, 54,000 odd members. We as the Chamber of Commerce for Singapore are working closely with the Durban Chamber of Commerce in the near future in sharing events and networking events, etc. Due to the fact that the opportunities in KZN and those regions are significant. Nigel, over to you.
Well, good afternoon in Singapore and good morning in South Africa. My name is Nigel Ward and I serve as the president of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Firstly, let me say thank you. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to be able to address you briefly this morning and this afternoon. Thank you. So the Durban Chamber of Commerce is one of the oldest Chamber of Commerce in Africa, in fact, and it was founded in 1856. It has a large member base, and it's a metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. And one of the key aspects and one of the key principles is around advocacy being the heart of our work, where we want to assist our members in securing trade and investment opportunities, both locally and internationally. We want to provide support across a spectrum of sectors, engaging through thought leadership and forums. And as a chamber, we have almost 21 forums across those sectors to be able to do that. With the advent of COVID, we used it as an opportunity to digitally be able to do this. And a lot of our interactions and our forums and our thought leadership is now done digitally to improve and support investment and trade opportunities. As a business-based and member-focused organizations, our strategic purpose is to help create a conducive economic environment, to promote economic growth in the region and partner key stakeholders. And I guess with the pandemic and the impact that it's had both locally and internationally on the economy, these type of interventions are now even more important to refuel and reignite our economies. Some of the big opportunities that exist for Asian investment in Durban is in the logistics area, life sciences, agri-processing, information and communication technology. This area is really growing in Durban. One of the biggest new employees of labor in Durban now is the call centers, and it's rapidly expanding. And the beauty of the call center expansion is that the downstream effect that it brings for other industries and other economies to support this. Tourism is probably, particularly in our province of KwaZulu-Natal, one of our biggest assets, and really a lot of opportunity there. And then from a manufacturing point of view, there's a lot of manufacturing base in our province, which the Durban Chamber is supporting. And we have a lot of membership in our manufacturing forums, from an automotive industry, from a clothing and textile industry, pulp, paper industry, and electronics manufacturing is also growing. And the infrastructure in and around our province is really well suited to support this. As a chamber, we see tourism, agri-processing, manufacturing, and I guess IT technology as probably the 4 key sectors without trying to leave anybody out. The Durban Chamber believes that South Africa and Southeast Asia continue to strengthen their trade relations, and by doing so, South Africa and Southeast Asian countries can both explore broader economic opportunities. And I personally believe that there's a lot of opportunity here. As South Africa enters the digital future, we believe that countries within Southeast Asia can play a critical role in assisting South Africa in harnessing and navigating the opportunities and obstacles in the digital revolution. Finally, in closing, I'd like to leave the audience today with a very brief and short message. The South African government firmly believes in foreign direct investment, as does the Durban Chamber. We encourage our business partners to continue taking advantage of the good bilateral ties between South Africa and Singapore, the ties that will further ensure Singapore's ability to do business with ease. And this is really critical. It's important that we're able to do bilateral business with ease. The Durban Chamber wants to be the gateway in doing business in Durban, and its doors are always open to explore opportunities in an economically free environment. So I'd like to leave it there. I'd like to wish you well. And please, as I said, Durban Chamber's doors are always open both ways to support any form of trade and advocacy that will benefit both economies. Thank you very much and good day.
Thanks, Nigel. Really good words, and we're looking forward to partnering with you going forward and bringing some of those synergies closer to South Africa and Singapore as we go on this year. And lastly, we have Eustace Mashimbye, CEO and proudly South African. I think it fits quite well that we finish today's event with this organization. The event of Buy Local and the campaign has gone viral in South Africa to support local business in South Africa with a context of opportunity and entrepreneurship. Eustace, over to you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, like we say in South Africa, all protocol observed. Thank you for having me. As introduced, my name is Eustace Mashimbye, and I'm the CEO of Proudly South African. And what we are essentially is a buy local campaign, and we are responsible for ensuring that those who make purchasing decisions choose locally made products every time they buy, whether they're buying for the private sector, for the public sector, or even buying as ordinary consumers doing their shopping for their own households. And the reason behind this is because South Africa has high levels of unemployment, poverty levels that keep growing, as well as growing inequality, in fact, regarded as one of the highest levels of inequality in the world. And so a buy local campaign was formed back in 1998 on the back of a presidential job summit convened by the then President Nelson Mandela. We had gathered all social partners from organized labor, from business, from government, as well as from civil society, under one roof, under the banner of the Job Summit, to try and identify ways in which jobs could be created and initiatives could be found that could help stimulate the economy to a point where those jobs that existed could be retained. And so in 2001, Proudly South African opened its doors, and the model was based on what Australia had put in place at the time through their Australian Made campaign, because buying local is a tried and tested phenomenon all over the world. Buy local campaigns exist in different countries, regions, and towns. And the example that I've given there is of the US, where they have legislation in place to drive localization and to ensure that those who buy, as long as they're buying products that America or the US is able to produce themselves, that they buy and choose that product that is made in the US. So as far back as 1933, they enacted an act, a Buy American Act, followed it up with another Buy America Act in 1982 and issued an improvement to that act in 2017. And we saw that when the current President Biden came into power, within a week after coming into office, he signed an executive order to strengthen the Buy American provisions in order to ensure that the federal government purchases goods and services that are made in the US. So it's a tried and tested methodology used all over the world, including in first world countries. If you look at South Africa and the unemployment numbers in the country, we have an unemployment rate of 32.5%, where if you look at the expanded definition of that unemployment rate, it actually is about 42.6%, where a total of 11.1 million unemployed. If you add the 3.9, those people who are discouraged and who have stopped looking for employment. And if you look at the youth, in excess of 60% of young people in South Africa are unemployed. And this is in the context of a population of about 59 million people. And so Proudly South African as a buy local campaign has 4 focus areas. And these include focusing on what government buys and rolling out education programs to educate procurement officials in the public sector and in government in the main on the importance and economic impact of buying locally made products. There is legislation in South Africa which allows government to designate items that it is going to buy locally whenever it buys those specific items. And the role of Proudly South African is to ensure that that the regulation or legislation that is in place is adhered to by those who are in government, and we assist by rolling out education programs. There is no legislation that can force anyone in the private sector to buy local. And so our focus area in the second instance is to focus on educating those who make decisions in the private sector on the importance of buying local and ensuring that they make decisions that benefit the South African economy. The third area of our work focuses on educating the general public on the importance of buying local. And the last area is where we focus on ensuring that those who want to buy local, those who want to hit our call, know how to access those locally made products and services. So we promote accessibility of locally made products and services. Those of you who are familiar with the Pan South African logo, because I know that there are some of you on the call who are in South Africa itself, will know that the Pan South African logo is made up of the colors of the national flag of the Republic of South Africa, which tells the consumer or the end user who sees the product with that logo, and that the product is indeed locally made and is made in South Africa. And the green tick that you see on the logo basically tells the end user that it's a high quality nature. Because any product or service that qualifies to be a member of Pan South African has to tick those 4 boxes, or has ticked those 4 boxes. The first one being that the product must contain sufficient local content and that is locally made. Secondly, it must be of a high quality nature, and that in the course of producing that product or rendering the service, the company implements sound environmental standards and helps us preserve the environment. And lastly, that they treat their workers fairly, and we have a robust labor legislation in the country that companies that do business in South Africa have to adhere to, and we check for adherence to those levels of compliance with legislation around employment of people in the country. What we have done as Pan South African in order to promote accessibility of locally made products and to ensure that those who want to buy local find it easy to access locally made products is we've come up with an online store, rsamade.co.za, where every single item that is sold on this platform, on this online store, is locally made by members of Pan South African whose products have been vetted. And so what it is then it becomes a market access opportunity for members of Pan South African and companies that have consumer-facing products that want to take their product out to consumers. Companies that affiliate with us can list their products on the site for free. And what the offering is basically on the platform is that it's a platform that allows consumers to access high-quality products. And in the process, we help those companies that make these products to retain the jobs that are on the platform and to possibly create new jobs from these local producers, because as demand for the products that they produce increases and there's a need for them to produce more, as they start producing more, they can retain the jobs in those companies and they can possibly create new jobs in order to meet the demand. The other thing that we have done as Pan South African is we've introduced portals that make it easy in response to COVID-19 for those looking for any items that are required during this time to find those items. So we have created portals on our website on proudlysa.co.za. There's a COVID-19 portal which houses clothing, cloth masks, that houses detergents and disinfectants, that houses face shields, medical PPEs, and we have now even created more portals that are focused on medical PPE, and this includes portals that house suppliers that produce disposable plastic aprons, examination of sterile gloves, sanitizers, surgical masks, isolation gowns, as well as FFP2 respirators. When the pandemic first hit us as a country, the items that were bought in response to the country to help us deal with the pandemic were predominantly bought from outside of South Africa. And so the portal seeks to ensure that as we continue protecting ourselves and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, that we utilize products that are locally made. And so we have found suppliers who, some of them have pivoted and repurposed their businesses to ensure that they can produce these items. And the Proudly SA website or portal seeks to be that place where all of them can find these products. And so it makes it easy for decision makers in the private sector and the public sector looking for these items to buy them from there. So in the public sector, government has designated items. They advertise procurement opportunities and tenders and RFPs. And what we do as Pan South African is we track all the tenders through our tender monitoring system. So we track the tenders for designated items. And as we find those items that government has designated for local procurement, we send it to those companies that are in our books that are in a position to can bid for those tenders and make the products locally. In the process, we ensure that government corrects the tenders where the tenders are not written such that they exclude imported products from being supplied to government. And so we intervene at the time when the tender or the RFP or the procurement opportunity is advertised. And what you then image out of that situation with is that you get responses from local producers as bidders and government buying local, from local producers and buying locally made items. In the private sector, what we do is we rely on our database of vetted members who supply high quality locally made products to go into the private sector to seek localization commitments, where we ask them to identify products that they can ring fence for localization, and they give us a commitment to buy those items from local producers. Our responsibility as Proudly South African is then to identify suitable companies that can then be the preferred suppliers for those corporates that will have identified those items for localization. We have developed a system called MAP, which is Market Access Platform, where all the companies that make their products locally that affiliate with us can register themselves as suppliers, who then can be accessed by the corporates. The corporates then and their buyers register on MAP so that they can advertise their tenders and their procurement opportunities on MAP to those local producers. The buyers and suppliers then transact as a result of the matchmaking that happens on MAP. And what we do is we then track that spend in order to report because we have a dashboard that tracks the procurement spend that is in line with this commitment and gives us a sense of how much money has gone towards locally made products. Outside of COVID, what we do to educate consumers is we roll out physical activities, including mall activations, festival activations, and we roll out online competitions. We do a lot of consumer advertising. We go into universities and tertiary institutions to educate the youth about the importance of buying local, because they're consumers of the future, but they're also consuming already. We roll out consumer expos. We work with the unions and organized labor to mobilize them, to have them as shop stewards that can then get their employers to also buy local. We rely on sporting events as well to educate consumers on the importance of buying local. And all of this is done to ensure that consumers can be educated on the economic impact of buying local. In order to add on to the consumer education activities that we have when things are normal and we can roll out physical activities, is we also have a TV ad, we call it Game Time. And basically Game Time comes from an analogy of a sporting game. And if you think of a football match as an example, if the one team is not doing well in the first half, at halftime when they go back into the dressing room, they regroup and they come up with a better game plan to ensure that in the second half, they equalize and potentially win the game, and they come back from the deficit that they will have encountered in the first half. And so the Game Time advert is built on the same premise, where we're saying to South Africans, in the first half, before we got to COVID, before we went into a hard lockdown, the economy was already in trouble. We had already had successive quarters of negative growth, and we're already in recession. And so the COVID-19 imposed restrictions, which required us to have a hard lockdown, was an opportunity for us to pause, and it's half time. But that when we come back from that hard lockdown and we reopen the economy, that we behave as if it's the second half and we do things differently, and we buy locally made products, whether we're buying for ourselves in our homes or we're buying for the private sector or the public sector. And so we have partnered with all the major broadcasters in the country, the SABC, MultiChoice, and ETV. We've also rolled out this advert on online platforms and on digital platforms, basically trying to get to every single South Africans to get them to understand that the only way to turn the fortunes of the economy around, the only way to create jobs for ourselves and for the future generations that will come after us, is to make sure that we buy local. And this is the advert.
The second half is about to begin. We need to change the scoreboard. It's time for all of us to pause and rethink the game plan in order to save the future. I call on all of us to be game changers, because greatness isn't reserved only for some people. By buying local, we're choosing to create jobs and sustain the ones we have. Time and time again, South Africans have taken destiny into their own hands, creating products that the rest of the world wanted to buy. See, the world remembers about us, what we sometimes forget. but it's time for change. Let's all buy local. It's game time. Zanzi.
Local is lekker.
Your everyday decisions shape our future.
And that is the Proudly South African Buy Local campaign, basically calling on all South Africans to buy locally made products in order to ensure that we can turn the economy around and we can create decent and sustainable employment for the citizens of this country. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time afforded to me and Proudly South African to present to you on this auspicious occasion where you celebrate Freedom Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eustace. And I'm sure, like all South Africans abroad, we hopefully look forward to seeing a few stickers on some products that we buy in Singapore and Southeast Asia into the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are ending today with a little showcase of South African tourism, the true beauty of South Africa, and the opportunity that exists in South African tourism. This may be a little bit difficult for some people feeling a bit homesick overseas, but very proud for the people that that are obviously South African and enjoy these fantastic scenes. Enjoy. Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of the proceedings today. I just wanted to thank everybody that joined us far and wide, and a big thank you to our speakers for taking the time out to support us on this auspicious day. And special thanks to my team at the Chamber, especially Jay Trofsky, for putting all of this together. And enjoy the rest of your Freedom Day in Singapore, and in South Africa. We will enjoy the rest of the afternoon with a good traditional barbecue, or braai, as we like to call it here in South Africa. Please follow us on social media channels to know about our next events that are coming up, and sign up for our mailing list by going onto our website, sacham.sg, so you don't miss anything and become part of the next event that we host as the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much and goodbye. Thanks for your time.